Hey, everybody. Welcome to the third episode of Paw and Order Las Vegas, the animal welfare podcast where we hope to educate and empower you to take action. Today with me, of course, we've got Gina Greisen with Nevada Voters for Animals. Our partner in crime, but you're just showing me your glass there that Melanie gave you, is missing right now. So she's probably out saving an animal, but she did text she'll be here in about 20 minutes. So we'll bring her in when she gets here.
Yeah, it's been a very, very busy couple days.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And we're thrilled to have with us our special guest today, reporter Dana Gentry. A lot of you may not know her by her name, but I'm sure you've read a lot of her stories. I kind of compare her to the Darcy Spears of print media.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
She really gets into the details on these stories. And on social media or on broadcast media, you only can learn so much about a story, but Dana really gets in there, asks the tough questions. She's been an investigative reporter here in Las Vegas for 24 years, or a reporter, I guess we should say.
For a long time.
A long time.
I started at Channel 8 when I was an intern at UNLV in the 80s, and then Bob Stoddall hired me, and I worked there for a few years, and I took 15 years off to have kids. And then I went back into TV and did some stuff at Channel 8 and at Channel 3. And I enjoy print, though, because you don't have to get people to go on TV, on camera, and it's a lot easier to get people to talk when they don't have to be on camera. So I'm enjoying what I'm doing now.
That's good.
Yeah. I don't have as much experience in print as I do in TV, but...
How long have you been doing print then?
We launched the Current in 2018, so we just celebrated our 7th anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
Right. Yeah, thank you.
Some of you may know some of the stories she's recently written. One about the proposed state ban for puppy stores, the resurrections of Reba's law, Trump's big, beautiful bill, which would allow the slaughter of up to 64,000 wild horses potentially. And the puppy peddlers disguised as yoga. What were they?
Yeah, it's puppies in yoga or whatever.
You came for puppies in yoga, but then they tried to sell you one of the puppies, and I know you were pretty much the instigator of that. And maybe later on you can tell.
Well, I don't do the yoga, so we had so Melanie and another friend of ours actually. I said, you're going to have to buy tickets and take the class, and then you're going to have to ask if the puppies are for sale. And that's it's not illegal to have the puppies at the yoga class. What was illegal is when they said, oh, they're so cute. Are they for sale? And she said, why, yes. And here's the prices. Boom. It was done.
Outrageous.
We had animal control on standby, and they immediately dispatched an officer. And what I believe the
woman, what was so troubling about it is when I called the woman, the breeder, she said, I said, are you licensed? And she said, yes, I'm licensed. And I said, can you have your license information? And she said, oh, I do this all the time. I do this all the time. I'm in California. I don't have a license in Las Vegas. And I don't think she had a license in California, but it sounds like that is her business model. She takes puppies every weekend to a location somewhere.
And
because I think she had a pretty bad reputation in California. I don't think she could even sell it there anymore.
Yeah, very bad. You could just go on Facebook and see, the drama.
Well, before we get into more on Dana's stories, I want to do a little bit of recap.
Oh, okay.
Fox 5 was in here and did a story on us, which I was very grateful for.
Yes.
And Level 9 Studios, where we tape the podcast, was nice enough to let us come in, and Fox 5 come in. What did you get any reactions, or what were your thoughts on the story?
Oh, I thought it was great. I thought, and there was a couple different versions that aired, and you can go back and on the demand and watch the different ones. But the longer version is the one that they posted, and we've shared it.
Yeah, I felt very fortunate because there are a lot of podcasts out there, and we've really just begun. And a Fox 5 reporter reached out to me, said that they had seen our first episode and thought their viewers would really like to learn more about it. So hopefully that helped expose us to more people, and we're going to have more viewers.
And we do a lot of interviews. So it was really nice. I got a really nice message from one of the anchors over there. That said,
nice.
Yeah, and he's familiar because we share some medical issues in common. So
okay,
but yeah, no, really, I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it, and it's funny because he reminds me of the guy who does On the Road. His
Charles Carl.
No, the newer guy.
There's a different guy. You're right.
The
younger
Nevada
guy.
one?
The young version.
No, the younger version of On the Road, and that's what his
the reboot.
Yeah, his demeanor reminds me of that reporter.
I like him. He's kind of like everybody has a story kind of guy, right? Yeah.
Yes. I liked his. He's new. He's new to town, so yeah, we're very fortunate.
Oh, you're talking about Evan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was talking about Evan's style. That he reminds me of a well-known reporter that does.
That I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
well,
anyway,
if you're listening to this podcast, 4th of July is probably tomorrow. And it's a terrible time for your pets. And so we wanted to give everybody some tips on how to care for your dogs and cats, your pets, during the 4th of July. And if we can help just one dog from getting lost, this podcast will have been a success. I was doing some research, and July 5th is the highest intake day for all shelters across the country. Some, they estimate 30 to 60% more animals are taken in on July 5th. An animal welfare group in in Indiana did a study that saw an 81% increase for lost pet reports on July 5th. So if you weren't already aware, take your fucking pets inside. There's fireworks going off, and they're not well adjusted as they don't know we're celebrating. They think we're at war.
Yeah.
And
it's funny how your perspective changes when you're a kid.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
It's being in the pool all day, popsicles, hot dogs. I didn't eat them, but anyway. And then now I'm like air pollution, noise pollution. All the animals of the world, the birds. It's really troubling. So
I was an idiot myself. 20-something years ago, we took our dog everywhere with us, and I thought, oh, she would love to see the fireworks, and she hated it. And I learned the hard way. And so I don't want other people to have to have their dogs endure that. Well, Gina, do you have some tips maybe for people?
Well, I have the ones he printed out, but I also have the ones that to me, we doing this a long time that we tell people, and my own dogs. My dogs are terrified. I have a Beagle mix and named Daisy May, and it is a nightmare to watch your animals suffer and try to hide in the shower. We rescued a shepherd that lived a few blocks away from me, and she would send me videos of this giant black German shepherd that would cram herself into the shower stall, just absolutely terrified. And like you said, when you're younger, you love fireworks, you love loud things or whatever, but when you become an animal person or an animal lover, an animal advocate, it is truly a nightmare. I can't tell you how many times I've seen dogs, because I personally enjoy fireworks, but I enjoy the kind that are,
the safe
put on
Quiet.
by the hotels or, not the in your neighborhood. Yeah. Professional fireworks. And, when we would go and come back, and one time we saw this wolf hybrid and we tried, and it was actually after the fireworks on, it was New Year's Eve. And we chased this dog for hours, and he ended up getting hit by a car on Russell. So, please. And we've seen dogs go through glass windows. I've seen a dog actually impale himself trying to get through a fence. They are terrified. People are like, well, I don't know how my dog got out. They will jump a fence, go through a window, impale themselves. They will hurt themselves. They will run directly into traffic. Please find a quiet place for your dog. And actually, because it's so loud, I know in my neighborhood, I have to turn my TV volume up full blast to try to, block out some of the noise, because oftentimes they're shooting off fireworks right next door.
Gina, there is a number you can call to report that there are fireworks in your neighborhood.
Do you think it's effective?
I don't know if it's effective, but...
Are you talking about the I Spy? I think you go online and you report the I Spy, and then they say, oh, thanks. They don't want you calling 911, or even if you call 311, you're going to be on the phone.
In my neighborhood, Metro could drive down any street, and they're going to find people lighting off illegal fireworks. Well, I know that they have, like right now, they're seizing. They just did a story. They've seized already 10,000 pounds of fireworks or whatever. They're still working on it. They're pulling people over coming from the places where they know that they sell them. And I'm glad that they're putting more enforcement effort. They go into the neighborhoods in teams with, I believe, the fire department, Metro, and maybe a couple other agencies, which is good.
We saw one time, I actually videotapes the people that do the illegal fireworks right across Trop, where they lit the big palm tree on fire and almost lit the house on fire. We see people get their fingers blown off. We see all these things happen. Please, they're illegal. Don't take the chance. And right now, there's a lot of other enforcement actions going on that you may not want to take that chance to, draw attention to yourself. So please don't do it. And if you have pets, please make sure that they are secure somewhere. If you're having a party or people over where they can't slip through a door, because when they're terrified, they will slip out. And then, who knows if they even make it to the shelter, because there's a lot of hit by cars. So we'll ask you to create a safe zone, set up a cozy, darkened area with their bed, blanket, and favorite toys, somewhere they can retreat and feel secure.
And turn the stereo or radio up,
maybe a sound machine.
Full
if you
blast.
Have one for your
I would
baby
say,
or something like
full
that.
blast. Also, please check with your veterinarian. If you have a dog that's that terrified, my niece's dog actually had such a medical episode. She died because they get so terrified. They don't understand. It's like being in a war zone.
They go into flight mode.
Yeah, they're terrified, so they could have a heart attack or go into distress. I know my dog starts to pant very heavily, so they have the Thunder shirts. They have medications. Check with your vet. Maybe even go to Petco or PetSmart and ask them, because they have different things. There's CBD chews. There's a lot of different things. Please, it's your job to protect your pets. And look, I don't leave my pets anymore on 4th of July. I used to love to even go watch the fireworks. I don't do that anymore. I stay home with my pets.
That's great.
If you love your pets, please just stay home with them or leave them with someone you trust.
And don't think, I can get them adjusted to them. I'll start them, I'll be there with them and they'll get used to it. No, they won't.
We'll start out with sparklers.
Yeah. Maybe sparklers are okay, but
unfortunately, it's usually the neighbors right across the street that are like, I mean, I drove by one time and I just hate that because all my neighbors know better than to shoot off fireworks around my house. But the ones around the corner, the new ones, they literally, it looked like a small coffin of, this giant box of illegal fireworks. And I thought, wow. So yeah, they do have the I Spy you can report.
Even the sirens can drive dogs crazy. I have a dog who howls when she hears the sirens, and I think it's very troubling to her. So.
Is she a former canine unit?
No, she's not.
And I have all rescue dogs. And if you have a new rescue dog, more importantly, be aware of this, because you don't know what previous trauma your dog has gone through.
She is a rescue dog. I got her from the Animal Foundation like 10 years ago. So,
well, why don't we learn a little bit more about you then? What
can I just say that one more thing, please? Make sure your pets have a current tag, collar, or even if you don't have that, write your number in Sharpie on their collar. And please always make sure, because it is the law, it will be the law very soon, to microchip in every jurisdiction your pets. That is your sure way. I say that a tag and a tag and a collar is like your license plate, and the microchip is like your VIN number on a car. So please
make sure. Some people take their dog's collars off sometimes. Make sure your dog is wearing their collar during the 4th of July holidays.
And if your pets get lost, there's a lot of lost and found pages. There's the Paw Boost. You can check that. And, go to all the different shelters.
The Animal Foundation website, you can check to see if your dog's listed there.
You need to go down there, though. Mm-hmm. That's the thing, is you really need to go down there, because they're a hot mess. And sometimes their website isn't. Yeah. But check, thankfully, there's a lot of really nice people that will try to hold your pet. So they check the lost and found pages, Paw Boost, and yeah.
So Dana, you mentioned you have one dog. You have
no.
Are they all
any
rescues?
Of us just have one dog?
Yes, they are. In 2014, my 16-year-old pug passed away. And I swore I was never going to get another dog. And the next day, my mom said, I had a dream. You got a dog. So that night, my kids were having a barbecue, and I was upstairs on the computer on the NSPCA website, and I saw a dog and said his soul has been wounded by human cruelty and needs a home with no children. My children were all grown at that point. So the next day, I went and got him and found out later that my mother was lying. She never had a dream, but
that's hilarious.
She knew I was miserable. And so then 6 months later, I was at Channel 3 at the time, and we were watching the Channel 3 news on Saturday. And they had somebody from the Animal Foundation on with this dog, and I said, Rebel, that could be your relative.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went down to the Animal Foundation, and they had a meet and greet, and we came home with Sugar, who was a mess at the time. And then a few years later, my sister wanted a white German Shepherd, so I was on the NSPCA website looking for her, and I saw a dog who had been bitten by a coyote or pit bulls or something when the NSPCA found her. And she looked just like my dogs. So I went down the next day, and they brought her out, and she ran like under the table where I couldn't even get her. And they said, if you have other dogs, you should bring your dogs for a meet and greet. I said, this dog is terrified. Please. A meet and greet is not going to help this dog. So 8 or 9 years later, she's just kind of coming out of her shell now. But
yes. 8 or 9 years.
Yes.
Okay.
And then I have cats that I got during a Channel 3 telethon from the NSPCA in 2012. They're celebrating their 11th birthday. And that's our 12th birthday.
So how many pets total?
Hold on. I have a cockatoo. I also have a cockatoo.
All right, Melanie's here. Let's see what her excuse is for being late. Melanie?
I don't know how to tell time. I mean, I don't.
All right.
Your hair looks really good though.
You make up some, we told everybody you were out saving dogs, so maybe you could just go with that.
So Bryce, I have more animals than I should because my mother passed away, and I come from a long line of cat ladies, and so they were her pride and joy. So I have them as well, but everybody's set up quite well, and we're doing good. But
so I'm curious. You write a lot of stories about animals. When you're pitching ideas to your editor, are you able to pretty much write about whatever you want?
I am. I have a great editor, Hugh Jackson, who used to work with me at Channel 3. And, thankfully, he's an animal lover, but he understands the importance of good policy as far as animal protection. And he gives me a great degree of latitude. He also understands my bias. I jokingly always say have to tell the stories of the animals because they can't afford a good lobbyist. And that became even more apparent this year when the other side had a really good lobbyist.
Right.
So
you're talking about Alyssa Nave.
I'm talking about Alyssa Nave, yeah.
Yes. For those of you who don't remember, there was a puppy store ban bill going through the state legislature, passed the assembly easily. And if it wasn't for your article, really getting into the nuts and bolts of who was for and against this bill and what was going on in the state, I would have never seen Alyssa Nave's name. I would have never known who she was. And once I read that article, I looked her up and realized how influential she was in Nevada politics, and that she owns 12 or 13 veterinarian clinics with her family here. And that's when we started the boycott. My post about boycotting Nave animal clinics, because she was literally wearing a vet coat during the day, and at night she had a lobbyist leash, and she was telling the lawmakers what to do. And so you can't pretend to be helping animals during the day at your vet clinics and then advocating for puppy mills, essentially.
She's also a prolific donor, as you uncovered, and her father is as well and has been for years. And there's an institutional thing that goes on, even though we have term limits in the legislature now, and there is some turnover. People know who the contributors are, and they are prolific Democratic contributors, but they also do both sides of the aisle. So, they're very well known. I'm sure she has a lot of persuasion there, and I think that's why the bill.
What was your thoughts when you saw she was lobbying for the puppy store
bill
industry?
Wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah. Were you surprised it passed the House at the Assembly then?
I was, yeah. But it was so weird the way it happened. They didn't give it a hearing. And then I think there was a lot of pressure from people like you,
right?
Which is always helpful. But it's when you're in Carson City, it's like summer camp up there. It's like being away from home, and you think nobody's paying attention to what you're doing, and you can get away basically with whatever you want. And just,
what's your opinion in general on our state legislature?
I think it should be in Las Vegas. And I think they should probably be people who don't have jobs. And I think it's a great thing to have a citizen legislature. But if you don't have people who are getting paid a decent wage, there's just too much temptation.
Yeah, I know Gina has a lot of experience passing laws in the state legislature, but my opinion is that they're part-timers. They really don't know what's going on, and they're very easily manipulated by people who do know what's going on, aka lobbyists.
Yeah, and especially now with term limits, there is no institutional knowledge up there. I mean, say what you will about term limits. There are benefits and drawbacks with it, but those people did know what was going on and understood, the past, what had come before, and why bills were nuanced in the sense that they were.
Well, and they don't have to follow the open meeting laws, and it's a very
That's true.
short. It's
and
a
they're
very
not
short.
subject to the Open Records Act either, which is another huge problem.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like what goes on here, only on a bigger scale, but with less rules. Like and it happens really fast. And I think with the how dynamic our state is, especially in Southern Nevada, the legislature should meet every year,
Of
not
course.
every other year, and just for those many days. I mean, it is crazy that we, basically run our state
Like it's 1880.
Yeah.
And then, the puppy store ban got killed, but Reba's law, which, I'm all for penalties against animal abusers, but I don't think imprisonment is always the answer. I think that a lot of people who have substance abuse or other problems, there's different ways to treat that. The other thing is that I wrote when Steve Wolfson came out after the arrests of the two suspects that, there were not laws on the books that allowed him to issue a significant penalty. And so I started doing some research and found that he very rarely issued or sought the maximum penalty against anybody, even very egregious animal abusers. And I wrote a story about that. So I think it was all kind of a public relations move, unfortunately. And then, a week after the law passed, he cut a deal with one of the suspects in the case, which I imagine is for the benefit of getting her to testify.
Did you interview him?
He won't talk to me.
Why is that?
The same reason that other people won't talk to me, Bryce.
I went through a period where I wouldn't talk to you when you were working for Ralston.
I was dumb enough to go, and she did a big gotcha on me with the horse tripping, but that's okay because we won. We won the horse tripping not once, but twice.
Sometimes I have to play devil's advocate. I can't I do have a bias for animals on animal issues, but, I do have to look at other sides of things. I understand the people who own the puppy stores. They've put their life savings into it. It could devalue their business. But, then I think about like Petco and PetSmart, these huge corporations that are able to do it. And then, of course, the issue of the lives. And I think there just must be a way to incorporate adoptions into that business model and still make money off of it and get people who are I'm at Petco practically every day, so I can imagine if you adopt an animal there that you would they would have your business.
I'm sure you guys discussed it while I was saving a dog. I'm obviously I'm assuming, were you guys against pet stores? I'm against
the
pet
puppy
stores.
Yes.
The puppy stores. Pet stores, puppy stores. I was thinking about it too, and I'm like, why would anyone really be for puppy stores? I'm like seriously confused about that. So I feel like they're just a shelter that sells puppies for a high amount of money. Like there's no checks, there's no balances, there's no follow-ups on spay and neuter. Like someone could get, and I know it's expensive, like they could sell a Yorkie puppy for $2,500, and then someone comes back and gets the male Yorkie puppy like a few months later for $2,500. But do you know how many puppies that can produce over a period of time where they're way going to make their money back for that? There's no follow-ups, checks and balances, like nothing. There's no home checks. There's no
look at the hoarders.
happening.
They bought how many animals? It was
and
80
the hoarders,
pages.
There's
by the same token, I think the animal welfare industry needs to do, a better job of making known that you can get any dog you want from a rescue or a shelter. Yeah. And I think there are a lot of people. I had a friend the other day who had to put down her 18-and-a-half-year-old Yorkie. And she was talking about how she'll eventually get another dog. And I said, well, when you're ready, let me know. I'll help you. And, she has a doodle, so she wants to possibly get another doodle. And I said, well, I'm sure we can find one from a rescue or a shelter.
A lot of rescues.
And she said, why would anybody get rid of a doodle? How could they be in a rescue? And so I explained to her that, the circumstances change and people have to get rid of their animals. But I think that people just don't understand what is out there. And if there's a way to do a better job of making that known to people and saying you don't have to rely on breeders, you don't have to rely on pet stores. That's
we try to do that every time we talk about this issue.
Good.
And I know you mentioned that you understand these owners of these puppy stores have put their life savings into it. I feel no sympathy for them at all because they chose to go into a business of trafficking animals. They knew what they were doing. And there might be some of them who are better than others, but to me, they're all pimps. And there's good pimps and bad pimps, sure, but you're still a pimp. And that's what they're doing. They're making money off the backs of animals. I know a couple.
As tough as I am as a reporter, I always try to not discern motive. And I look for the best in people and hope that they're doing it for a good cause. And I'm sure that you're right and that profit is the motive. And, I'm not naive, but I just don't without knowing. And I do know in some instances because of the Humane Society study that was done, including a lot of the pet stores here. But yeah, I'm just trying to give people the benefit of the doubt and understand their financial motives for wanting to kill this bill. But you're right, it's trafficking, and people just have no respect for animals, and, like they have no respect for children, and they don't have a voice.
They should have seen the writing on the wall. These businesses are being closed across the country.
Right.
They're being made illegal, and so they should realize maybe I should have a plan B. Maybe I should find another business idea. And if you're not smart enough to do that, then I don't have any sympathy for you. Either.
I do want to chime in though and say that sometimes be careful what you ask for because, and I'm against puppy mills. I'm against pet stores. I would prefer that people would get because let's be real. There is an enormous, desire for puppies. And people are going to, they don't care. They get them off Craigslist. They go buy them in, bank parking lots. Oftentimes they're sick and they die of parvo or distemper or whatever. When I've been doing this a long time. We've done every scenario that you could possibly imagine and doing undercover buys and the backyard breeding and the pet stores, all of it. But don't mistake for the fact that there's a huge appetite for puppies. People are going to go the easiest, place that they can get them, which is going to be the corner pet store, right? Or on Craigslist or something like that. And they have a brick and mortar store. At least we can walk into a brick and mortar store and see the conditions of those puppies. Do not think that when you shut down a brick and mortar pet store that you're shutting down the industry, because you're not. You are just driving it underground. And so if you're going to shut it down, you better make sure you shut down all the other routes, because people say, well, it's because I hate puppy mills. Well, guess what? I believe it's puppy heaven. If you go on their website, they're breeding their own dogs somewhere, just like that lady. I think a lot of them are coming from these areas like in the high desert area of Southern California, where there's just these cruel, puppy mills. I don't know if it's in a garage somewhere or in a warehouse somewhere, but they're going to do it. People want their puppies, so it is about educating and informing people about, the conditions that you're supporting when you buy a puppy.
And we've talked before about how easy it is to track down these dogs that are sold by breeders, but the county and the municipalities just don't put any money into it.
Exactly. They'd rather throw the money at the end of the problem. We talked about that with Victoria on the last podcast. And believe me, pet stores are on my list, but backyard breeders are actually at the top of my list above pet stores. So we can talk about pet stores, but just be careful, because when you shut down a pet store, you're not shutting down the industry. You're driving it underground because they outlawed it in,
you are making it more
California.
Difficult, though.
You are, but people are going to get what they want, just like drugs. They're going to get it.
But don't you think it's a matter
door-to-door delivery? The one guy that he was in Henderson, he had a little pet store. They weren't even open. They only had a couple puppies in there, and he said, I don't even really need the storefront anymore. I do all my business. Like he gets on an airplane and delivers
They're
puppies.
going online.
They go, you can just, they get delivered right to the airport.
That's why I think public education is so important because like the 16-year-old pug I told you about, my son, when he was little, it was during that movie with the pug in it and Will Smith. I don't remember.
Oh yeah, Men in Black.
Men in Black. It was then, and my son just wanted a pug, and I was like, "Why do we have to have a pug?" So I went and paid $350 at a lady's house and got a pug, and thank God I did, But still, that was in 1998 or whatever. Yeah, that was like then. I think that was my perception that was okay to do it. Now I would never even think about that, and I try to dissuade anyone I know from going to a breeder. So I think it's just, the same kind of...
I would be curious to know, too, if these pet stores are actually going to these places and like personally visiting.
They say they do. The pet landlady from Henderson who owns that, she told me that she goes to all of them. I have no idea.
Yeah, but she's one person. I don't believe her either. So do all of them, though, go visit, or do they just go off the pretty pictures that are posted online and the pictures that are maybe sent to them that make things look good, but they don't actually know how? Because I've taken in dogs into my rescue that came from pet stores, and I'm going to tell you, they have behavior problems, and there's some issues there. There's some serious issues there sometimes, even medically, with some of these dogs from pet stores. And it's
do you take in the ones that don't get sold?
I have actually offered. There's a pet store down the street from my house, and I went in there and I was asking a bunch of questions, just being nosy, like I was, an investigator. And then they said that there was like 1 or 2 4-month-old ones there, or maybe 5 months old. And I said, I'm like, I will take them right now into my rescue. Oh, well, we're gonna, try to sell them. They don't care. They're gonna try to make money off of whatever they can. And because it said like discount or something. So I was like, ooh, maybe this is my chance to save these 2 puppies. And they weren't budging. So
Dana, you write a lot of stories trying to raise awareness about animal welfare. Do you ever consider yourself an advocate, or does being a journalist get in the way of that?
Well, that's what I don't advocate on other stories. I try not to as hard as I can. But if I do cross a line on an animal story, I really don't feel apologetic because, as I said, they don't have a voice and they can't afford a good lobbyist. So if whatever I can do, I will. I wrote a story years ago, I wrote a story about TNR and how it didn't exist in Henderson.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was TNR, the best of the bad options, something like that. And I showed a picture of the mother cat that I trapped behind my grocery store. I also got her 4 babies. And I talked about how, difficult it was to know that she was out there and then to get her and have the prospect of knowing I broke the law, first of all, by doing it. And then was I going to put her back? Not a chance. So I have a feral cat as well, but she's very happy and has a catio but she never goes outside other than the catio. So I do. And I explained in that story that I have a personal interest in doing this and, a bias. So yes, I do feel like I sometimes advocate, but I also disclose it. I disclose my bias.
Has anyone from an opposing side ever called you out?
I've had discussions with people.
I think there was a little bit of calling out at the legislature, wasn't there? Something
was there?
Well, a little
someone
bit.
accusing Dana of being
from
being
what
biased?
I understand, there was some backroom discussion where people were blamed for letting me know about the lobbyist, but I found that out on my own. So
yeah.
Oh, so she was not publicly lobbying. This was all behind closed doors. She wasn't speaking out in public.
Lobbyists generally don't testify or anything like that. And they do, especially on an issue like this. I imagine that she was trying to keep it on the lowdown because I spoke with lawmakers who said, yeah, as soon as I heard this, I was like, that could be a problem for her.
Right. I think we did help make it a problem for her. I know one of the...
how's the boycott going? Let's talk about that because, he's got a corner on the market here.
Sure. It's difficult to gauge how well it's doing. I can tell you a veterinarian called me personally who was listed as a vet clinic on the NAVE website. He had purchased the clinic 4 or 5 months previously And he told me he'd been getting many phone calls from angry people, and that if I could please remove him from the list because he recently purchased the clinic from Nave. And I checked the Nave website. I don't remember, so I don't want to. It's not on the list anymore because I updated the list. So if you see my current list on Go Vegas Dog, that's an accurate one.
Was it on the Nave website?
It was on the Nave website. And then a week later, it was no longer on the Nave website.
Okay. They may have cleaned up their website. But that is his business model. He has been doing this for decades. He opens all of these 70s, all these clinics and then hires a veterinarian who eventually ends up buying it from him. So...
And that's hard. And I will tell you, so when you did that, just to, of course, be controversial, it's difficult because you don't do the rescue side like we do. And like the cat on the freeway that was hit. And then we got, one of the cat rescues to go out.
Where are you going to go? Tropicana Animal
That's
Hospital.
exactly where we went. And they do work with some of the rescues. So we have no choice. You go there all the time. I go there. And now they're open 24 hours and they don't charge that humongous fee that the other, emergency hospitals do at night. So as advocates,
which I think he owns two of the emergency hospitals. Is that correct?
He owns a lot of them.
And I've heard
that's
that
why
he's
it's
even
impossible.
Specialist hospital.
Yeah.
Specialty
And he makes it more difficult for other ones to open.
Yes.
Oh.
He really is the only game in town in a lot of ways.
So it's, so when you said that, I was like, yeah, that would be great. Except that cat that day, so I should just let the cat die because Bryce said not to go there. Like there isn't a choice. We're already short. There's already a huge shortage of vets.
Right.
So it was very hard for the rescues, and we shouldn't have to feel bad about that. Like,
and I'm sure there are very good veterinarians working in many of those hospitals as well.
We have relationships with them, and it's not their fault that that's who they work for either. They're just, they are the only game in town pretty much.
Also from a financial perspective. You said that, they work with, some of the rescues sometimes, but even not working, they're still pretty fairly priced compared to some of the other full service vets, most of the other full service vets in town.
And I know there was talk at the time about Alyssa Nave possibly having, or her family's business having a relationship with some of the pet stores as far as a voucher to get care. Did you ever?
A lot of the pet stores do
able
that.
to confirm that?
I was told that they worked with a couple of the puppy stores. So when the puppy stores got sick, had sick puppies, they had contracts to take them to the Nave clinic. So she did have an additional financial benefit.
But there's nothing illegal or unethical about that for a lobbyist. A lot of lobbyists do that. So,
and I have to tell you, I was very happy when I did go to Tropicana and saw the sign for spay and neuter, which was the first law I wrote in 2009. That, you have to disclose it. A lot of the pet stores a lot of the veterinarian offices that are supposed to post that were not posting it, especially the ones that do service the pet stores, or they would put it on the door, on the back side of the door and then open the door against the wall. So it was good to see that they do that. And we do a lot of spays and neuters over there. And they also match the price of some of the spay neuter centers. So it's tough. It's rough. We were angry. We were angry about, the lobbyist situation and the fact that it is, Dr. Nave's daughter and that he owns, but
I hope she'll think twice before representing the pet store industry again or the puppy mill industry.
You
don't think she will?
I would just really,
so, Bryce.
I mean, I would assume that
she really thinks she feels like she's above all the criticism.
Alyssa's a lovely lady. I just don't think that's a concern to her. No.
Okay.
I would just really hope that people that, especially if you get into vet care, whether you're a vet, whether you own a clinic, that you always do what's right for the dogs. Or the animals. It doesn't have to be a dog.
Business.
I understand.
Like a private school, you hope they're going to have the child's interests at heart.
Because I have a rescue, and a rescue is still a business. Like I'm running a business, but we're always going to do what's best for the dogs, whether that's, not placing them in a home that I think is the wrong fit, or, providing whatever kind of medical care they need. Like we are always going to do what's best for the dogs.
And that's what practices that do that too.
But that's that's what our rescue is based on. Right. That's where our values lie.
Right.
So whenever we have a question in mind regarding a dog, what's the best thing for the dog? Like it's always about the dog. It has nothing to do about us, money, any of that stuff.
You know, she had the
and I wish
opportunity-
everyone else would think the same way, especially these vets offices, because I'm gonna tell you, some of these prices, are a little crazy. So, and I really wish they would actually also, on a side note, support the law. Because I can't tell you how many people, whether it's someone that I dog sit for or whether it's someone that I'm, interviewing for a potential adoption, and they say their dog isn't fixed. And I'm like, well, didn't your vet tell you that it's the law? She was like, no. And I've been there like 5 times in the last year and a half for whatever situations occurred. And the vet never mentioned, I can't tell you how many times I hear that. So that's a problem for me too, is these vets are not educating their clients when they come in and they're like, hey, or they're saying, hey, the dog is a large breed and it should not be fixed until it's 2 or 3 years old.
Maybe there should be a disclosure or something that you have to sign that you've informed the owner.
Well, and even the last meeting that we had with the rescues at the Animal Foundation, not the last one, I think it was the one before, Hillary was there. And I actually brought that up. And I said, as someone who is seeing the repercussions of what's going on at the shelter, like, can't you even partner with the vets and be like, hey, this is becoming a problem. Like, can you at least make sure you're telling all of your customers that it's the law at 4 months old?
Yeah, try to tell vets what to do. Try to tell vets what to do.
To your point about Alyssa, having concern about her reputation, and she had the opportunity. I called her, I talked to her, and she was just like, oh, Dana, she had an opportunity to talk to me about it and tell me her side, and she chose not to. So
she didn't say anything. She's just like, this isn't an issue.
She just said, I'm not going to, no comment,
Mm-hmm.
Can we go
tried
back?
to belittle me basically for even bringing it up, like it was, like it even mattered, which I think anybody would think it does.
And they did.
Right?
Everyone did think it mattered.
I would like to go back because I know we're getting close to that, but to go back to the story about like Reba's Law and the article that
the penalties.
Well, yeah, because I mean, I was
And
like,
bringing it
I
back.
was, I know I was blowing your phone up over that, like telling you, like, we need to do this story, like, and I'm grateful because I don't think people understand the deep dive that you did and the records request that you did, and we had to wait a really long time for those records to come in, and for you to go through all of them and see that he was not doing it. So when he stood up there and did his press conference, and I'm sorry, what was that quote that I gave you? Oh yeah, I'm calling bullshit on him, saying that, oh, well, gee, I mean, I only have the option to do 1 to 4 years or whatever, and then turns around, like you said, and gives one of Reba's killers 7 months.
He's a deal maker. He's a defense lawyer at heart.
Yeah,
still,
it is. It is so, but I want people to understand that this is why I had there was for me a lot of controversy about Reba's Law, because everyone was just like, oh, yay, rah, 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 pass that law. And I was just like, I was actually what I was trying to do as someone who, who is investigated cases and is, sees where the
You had a very good point. You need to put the work in at the police department and in animal control to make sure that people have the authority to go onto property to investigate these incidents, as well as to ensure that evidence is preserved, that somebody who knows what they're doing is investigating the case.
Yes.
And, that we spend so much money on such stupid things in this valley that there just needs to be more pressure from people on their elected officials to say, hey, these animals didn't ask for this. We brought them here.
Speaking of, does anyone looked into July 2nd for Olivia Underwood for Jazzy? Because that was supposed to be when she goes to court.
Not yet.
And I tried to look it up. So to everybody watching, if this is posted before July 2nd,
it might come out the 2nd or 3rd.
we are going to need everybody there. So
we'll look
keep
that
an
up
eye
and
on
get
our
that.
pages. Yeah.
Get that up. But I definitely want to, make sure that people understand, like, it's not worth, like, the laws aren't worth the paper it's written on. They're just words on paper. We already know, because you've written about it extensively, that, when it's what you say is different than what you do. And we really need people to understand that, like with Canella, if you don't have a proper investigation, which at some point, possibly she was just her body was going to be scooped up and just taken to the shelter and labeled as a hit by car, that there's not a proper investigation done, that, that there's the infrastructure is not there to make sure that we're, doing proper investigations on every animal because each one deserves it. And
you can't fault Steve Wolfson if he says, I don't have the evidence to convict somebody, but but somebody needs to make sure that the resources are there, right?
Absolutely, from start to finish, whether it's more animal control officers, more training for them, the tools that they need for them to gather the evidence. There's a lot of rules and people just want to go, that's a felony. Okay, well, if it's a felony, you have rights and there's due process. And a lot of that has to do with even chain of custody, like the container that Reba was in. We talk about that a lot. Everyone's like, where's the container? It was left behind by the authorities because they didn't know. They weren't trained. And those are the issues that was important to me. And I did reach out. I tried desperately to reach out to the legislators that were trying to get 10 years, which I knew was never going to happen, and instead say, let's work on building the infrastructure and making sure that we're doing proper investigations on every case, and then being able to get maybe 1 to however many years instead of, people need to understand that everyone wants to celebrate, yay, Reba's Law got passed. But what did we really do?
Yeah.
When we know that we have a district attorney that isn't going to enforce it.
Yeah, so, Bryce, you mentioned the legislature. Another thing that it should be annual instead of every 2 years. They just do not have the time to give any attention to these issues, and they would be so much more enlightened, if they did.
I agree completely.
Well, and we need more citizen lobbyists because, like you said, the animals don't have a lobbyist, but the big, the special interest groups sure do. And
God bless the people who go and do public comment. I love them, but public comment is just like an irritation, I sometimes feel, to the body that they're before because they just listen to the same message over and over again. And,
usually by then the bill's been decided. You need to get to them before that point.
Exactly.
Are there any stories you're currently working on right now that you'd like to share about regarding animals or that you think needs to be written about?
Well, we had an experience yesterday, and I just think my son called me, and he runs a marijuana grow and production facility, and they found a cat and kittens. The cat took off, and they didn't know what to do with the kittens, and one person took a kitten home, and he brought the others to me, and thankfully with Gina's help, we were able to get them to people who know what they're doing and are feeding them. But Gina mentioned there was a law prohibiting you from separating a mother cat from her babies. In this case, the mom took off, and they didn't know if the cat was still in the building or outside, and nobody wanted to leave a box of kittens outside in this heat. Or
lock them in the garage for the weekend because they
that's
surely would have died.
I'm wondering if there's a way to make people more aware of not only that, but you've mentioned to me about the wild fowl, the waterfowl and stuff, and people going and trying to help them, and you're not supposed to even touch them. And so I would like to work on more awareness issues like that. Unfortunately, the last 4 or 5 months have been like drinking from a fire hose in my business. And it's hard to, I'll say this, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but it's hard to do stories on animals when people are getting picked up by police or, plucked off the street by men they don't know in masks and thrown into unmarked vehicles and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and believe me, we're very upset about that too. Like I am anyway. We talk about that a lot, but I do want to say that even when, to your point, the Animal Foundation right now currently doesn't want to take any other animal besides just, like dogs, cats, guinea pigs, whatever.
Exotics.
So so no exotics. So that would include the birds and the different animals that get picked up.
Those are even they're under federal jurisdiction, aren't they?
They're state wildlife department.
Oh, state wildlife.
I think, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But they also get different animals like peacocks and whatever. But there isn't. I mean, we just rescued the duck and the baby, and there was nowhere to take. Thankfully, one of the rescues did take the mom, but the little babies, died.
And I remember Donna the duck out on the golf course with Dart Anthony.
I mean,
remember that?
Huh?
Donna the duck. Were you here then?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
I don't think so.
Donald's girlfriend.
Yes.
Oh, look at that.
Somebody
Yeah,
shot. Well, I
Donna
used to
That's
live on the
Daffy.
golf
Remember?
course that's
there's
in the
Daffy.
movie because I lived in the house that's in the movie Casino on the golf course, and there
That's
was
your house?
Yeah, the
okay.
one that she's got the big closet. My mom built that closet.
Oh, really?
When she goes in, the
Oh
cops
my
out in the
gosh,
driveway
really?
waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the backyard. That's the pool I grew up in. But anyway, the plane lands on the golf course, and
Mhm.
yeah. So there was a lake out there, and we used to get frogs out of it and so little tadpoles. And but there was a duck one time. Somebody shot the duck. It had an arrow through it, and it was swimming
wow.
around out there.
Oh,
And
I
the
did think I
Humane
remember that,
Society
yeah.
man at the time was the Humane Society leader was a man named Dart Anthony. And I just remember crowds of people out there like surrounding this pond while they were trying to rescue this duck, you know. So animal stories have always resonated in Las Vegas, even back in the old days.
I think the media does recognize that. We see it with the local news. They're
Unfortunately,
eager to,
a lot of the TV stories are, just kind of sensational. And I wish they would be a little more in depth.
well, that's why we have
Me
you. So we
too.
really
Thank you.
appreciate.
Yeah, thank you
all
for the work you
stories
do.
you do.
Yeah.
for
Well, I
animals.
appreciate all of the work you do, and I think that we really need to budget better for animal control and for animal protection. But I think that there needs to be a piece in there, and I tell people who listen to me all the time, there needs to be a piece in there to make sure the rescues who do the real work, and I've written about this, are getting compensated in some way. It's just not fair for the Animal Foundation and the other government shelters to get all of the funding. And I understand it's not enough. It needs to be more, but the rescue shouldn't be relied on to do all the work. A lot of people are just, put all their hearts and all of their money into it and end up going bankrupt. It's just not right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's expensive.
thank you again for coming. We really appreciate it and encourage everybody to read your stories in the Nevada Current. And
Thank
we
you.
usually always share them as well if people are having trouble finding them. But now people can put a face to the stories.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I do want to, I don't know if we'll edit this in or we'll just pick it up right from here. I wanted to do a little bit of recap on the issue we talked about last time, free pet adoptions, because there was a huge response online, and 90% of the people, even most of my friends, agreed with you two. I wanted to read some comments that people had posted online. So ADA Animal Justice Now wrote, "Free doesn't mean safe. When shelters waive fees with no screening, dogs can end up in dangerous hands, used for breeding, baiting, or dumped again." Linda Powers wrote, "I would rather see them adopted than killed." That was the only one that was positive for me. I think she's a very sensible woman, and she understands. And let me clarify. You made some good points, Gina. I would rather they not have to do free adoptions, right? I wish they would do everything else instead so they didn't get to that point. But being in the situation that they are in, run by who they're being run by, not being very effective, at this point, I would rather them try to do anything they can to find these pets homes. Hopefully, they should be screening them as well a little better than they are. Let me. Did you want to say something? I got a couple more comments. Fostering saves lives. You guys probably follow them. Their response was, "It's a hell no. No free dogs ever. The Animal Foundation has a marketing department, and their only tool is free dog events." I mean, I kind of agree with that. And then lastly, Tyne 3700 said, "As somebody who networks dogs at the shelter to get fostered and adopted, and who also works with volunteers on Lost and Found pages on Facebook, we see a lot of dogs that are adopted out on those free events found on the streets a day later. More than when it's a regular adoption, even though we see many of those as well." So do you guys have any final comments? Or Dana, is there anything you would like to comment about free adoptions, or do you not want to step into this quagmire?
I'm torn. Like you, I want to see as many get adopted as possible. On the other hand, I can't stand to see an animal on the street that's suffering. But as you know, because you've spent a lot of time down at the courtyard, sometimes when you have nothing, when you have everything, your dog can be your best friend or your cat. When you have nothing, it really is, and I hate to see that taken away from people. So I don't know. I'm torn. I always want to see them provided for. But by the same token, I think we should also have the ability for people to go and get free services for their animals, free veterinary services, free food, if you qualify. So that, if you want to push free adoption events, then you've got to back it up with the services for the same population.
That's a good point.
Exactly.
I haven't heard
That
before.
is a really,
Exactly.
that's a good.
That's what we talk about. If you can't afford even a $50 adoption fee, then how are you going to afford food, medical, grooming? And that's a huge issue, is the grooming, especially in the summer. Look,
it's not always about can they afford. It's called a promotion to get people excited to do something. If they give away free TVs at Best Buy, that doesn't mean that people couldn't afford a TV, but they're all going to show up to get a free one.
It's the same thing with the animals that are adopted for people at the holidays.
Then
it's not
give away a
necessarily
free
in the best
TV
interest
when you
of the
adopt
animal,
the dog
right?
for
you would know.
$100. Okay,
You don't want to give somebody an animal as a gift unless right.
Don't pigeonhole me with saying that I'm not for promotions. I'm all for promotions. I think they should always be working on promotions, doing education, information, making things excited. I think that they should have a coffee cart down there. I think that it should be a place almost like the outdoor swap meet, which is now closed. To make it a nice place to go, to have people go hang out, be able to hang around with animals, meet the animals. I think it should be a fun place. It always looked like a prison. They finally painted a mural, which I posted, and everyone went, "Oh my God, I can't believe." I'm like, it's a pretty mural. And by the way, it was donated. So, but look, it is the shelter. I support the shelter. I support the animals. I support the volunteers and the workers that work there. I don't support the leadership. And I would much rather, if there's money to be put into it, please put it on the prevention side. I'm going to tell you right now, I've been doing some digging, and I don't think people are going to be very happy with the results that I'm getting back as far as their free promotions and how many animals are leaving that building
which we'll talk about.
We'll have to leave that
We'll have
for
to
the
talk
next
about that.
podcast.
Yeah.
Unsterilized.
Thank you again, Dana, for coming in. The last comment I'm going to read is from Linda Della Hunt, who said, "I love this podcast." So we have our first fan.
Thanks, Linda.
So keep listening, Linda, and everyone else out
Linda.
there. Thanks a lot.
Linda just pulled she was pulling a Chihuahua, a really old Chihuahua from the shelter. So I hope she was able to.
Linda.
Yeah, I hope she was able to find a foster.
And thank you to our fosters, and we need more fosters. But
Yes.
bottle feeders. Right now,
God
we are
bless
in
them.
an epic animal crisis, but definitely the worst cat crisis in years. So if you can bottle feed, or you're willing to learn how, even the folks that are fostering the little kittens that we got rescued, they're willing to teach people how to do it. So please.
Is someone trying to trap the mom?
Yes.
I need somebody to trap the mom.
Okay,
Yes.
so you're working on trying to trap the mom.
Yes, we're definitely. Otherwise, we're going to be having the same conversation in 4 to 6 months, because there'll be another litter of kittens in the warehouse.
I just don't like that mom out there panicked looking for those kittens.
And it needs to be dealt with. But that's the other thing is, if you do see kittens, don't automatically take them.
Don't take them.
If they're outside or in your backyard or something, they will tell you, don't take them, because if you take them to the shelter, they're very likely going to be put down.
Mom's just out looking for food.
Yeah,
That's
mom's
all.
out looking for food. Don't tamper with them. Don't mess with them. Don't touch them, because then she'll move them somewhere else. Leave them where they're at. If you can leave some food, like kitten food, out for mama, so she has plenty of milk.
Right.
And then as they get older and they start to move around, then we want to look at getting them trapped, getting them all spayed and neutered and all that. But you can contact groups like C5 or Henderson Cats or Las Vegas Cats to get help with that. But we need more trappers. We need more volunteer trappers. We just need more people that care about animal issues.
Did we talk about 4th of July?
Oh, yeah. We
yeah.
talked about 4th of July. Yeah.
Well, I missed that.
You were quiet during that segment for some reason. Thanks again, everybody, for listening in to the episode of Paw and Order Las Vegas. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.